to episode 282 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 20th of May 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Félim.
All right.
Graham.
Good evening, everyone.
And Will.
Hello.
We're all back together for the first time in what feels like ages.
Yay.
Yeah. Virtual hugs for Will.
Yes. Let's do some news then. And great news. Raspberry Pi is going public.
Yay!
Yeah. And they're going to expand their range of computers, and they're going to be able to have more money to develop the software. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. There's going to be no downside to this whatsoever. It's amazing news.
The children will be so happy.
As will all the nerds who bought them and basically propped up the entire company before they sold them out to industry around the time of COVID.
Well, I guess those children should have got into SCADA controllers a bit earlier on in their education then.
I mean, this is not good news, is it? I mean, it's fucking never good news when they do an IPO, whoever the company is, because now they're going to be beholden to bloody shareholders.
That is true, but the good news is from the article that the majority shareholder is going to be the original Raspberry Pi Foundation. And so, in theory, everything should still be working towards the benefits of the foundation. And any profits that are made will go back to the foundation and so, in turn, help the original goals of providing low-cost computing for everybody in the world.
That's not quite how IPOs work well. The profits won't all go back to the foundation. Like maybe as majority shareholders, the majority of profits will, but they will still be beholden to shareholders.
Fair.
I mean, also to play devil's advocate while we're talking about this side of the story, that means they get a shitload more money for investment, which can genuinely kind of bring forward their kind of advance in technology and the things that they need to invest in to make Raspberry Pi more successful. But just like everyone here, when has that ever worked out for the good of the actual thing? I don't know.
When have you ever known a company to either get bought or do an IPO and things get better?
Yeah, and I'd just much rather have seen the organisation grow as it had been doing and getting the things right that it needs to get right, that it could improve upon.
But they can't do more with the same resources. If they don't have more money coming in, then they're going to really struggle to expand and really achieve their dreams. And so I think that this is a legitimate way of getting more money in so that they can expand the business, hire more developers, hire more hardware engineers, bring more of that silicon design in-house, and then grow the company that way. I think it's a sustainable way of meeting the original goals.
But will it not also mean that the 49% who are now shareholders will want a greater return of the profits, and so the foundation or the company part will become more aligned with making money, which will not necessarily be in the best interests of the foundation?
Welcome to capitalism, pal.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's the ultimate destiny of any tech company, isn't it? Either you get bought or you do an IPO. They're the only options.
Couldn't we just hang about and just continue making lots of money and nice products?
No, because you have to be growing massively all the time.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, with the infinite resources that we have on this planet.
Maybe there's a wormhole in Cambridge that pumps it out from another galaxy.
Maybe, yeah. Well, that's not the only Raspberry Pi news. They've announced Raspberry Pi Connect, which they describe as a secure and easy-to-use way to access your Raspberry Pi remotely from anywhere on the planet using just a web browser.
So the deal here is that you can get a remote desktop session to your Raspberry Pi at home just by pointing a web browser at it. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's basically using VNC and WebRTC.
Well, that seems kind of handy, right? You don't have to punch holes in your firewall. You don't even have to know how to configure a firewall and port forwarding and all of that business. And it gives you remote access. That seems quite nice.
Yeah, and they'll try and connect you directly, but they do have their own relay server if you've got like double NAT and stuff like that.
You see, before they had an IPO, I would have trusted them. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, I did try this out and it worked reasonably well. It took a while for the first connection. I don't know what was going on. It just seemingly wouldn't connect. And then suddenly I looked at the window and it had connected. And then after that, it was fine. So that was a bit weird. But otherwise, it was just what you'd expect from a remote desktop, really. But it was very easy to set up, to be fair to them. I was trying to think of when I would use that particular feature, though.
Do any of you even use a GUI on a Pi at all?
No.
I don't.
I don't, but having recently bought a Pi 5, I do mean to try it.
I guess we are not the end users being targeted here, right? This should be some normal person from off the street going to buy a Raspberry Pi from a high street store, plugging it into their network and being able to access it and command it from anywhere on the internet. I think that's more the idea that's going on here.
Well, they also introduced the network installer relatively recently, which means that if you've got a properly up-to-date Pi, you can hold Shift down when you boot it, but not with a wireless keyboard because it doesn't fucking work. You have to find your USB keyboard and plug that in. But you hold Shift down, and then as long as you've got an Ethernet cable plugged in, it doesn't support Wi-Fi yet. I don't know if it ever will. But anyway, it then downloads effectively the Raspberry Pi Imager software. And then from that, it can download either Raspberry Pi OS or Ubuntu or some other OSs as well, and then flash it to the SD card. But seemingly not USB. I tried with a couple of different USB drives and it just would not recognize them. It was very frustrating. But it did work perfectly with the SD card.
Were they flash USB drives or were they spin and rust?
One was just a USB stick, my SanDisk Extreme, whatever it is. And the other one was a cheap SSD in a USB enclosure.
Right, okay, because I was going to say, I tried using the boot from USB mode ages ago. I've probably talked about it before. And it doesn't, it has a timeout on it, so it doesn't, it'll skip off to something else if you're not quick enough. So I end up just using the SD card as a boot drive, essentially.
No, this was an SSD, and it's interesting. I saw Explaining Computers. Chris made a video. He was on the show a few months ago, if you may remember. He made a video about it, and he had it flash into an NVMe drive, which is, I suppose, the other bit of news. They've got their M2 Hat Plus on sale now for $12, which allows you to connect an NVMe drive. And he had that working all fine. And in the video, he said it will work with USB. Well, it bloody well doesn't, I'm afraid, Chris. You didn't try it because I did and it didn't.
And maybe you have shit USB devices.
That is entirely possible, yes. So you've now got this little computer where all you need to do is give it power, peripherals, and storage, and then it can install its own operating system on itself, which is quite a big step, I think. Not needing another laptop or whatever. But what's really funny is that in that Explaining Computers video, he first had to update it, and it hadn't been turned on since December. And then I turned mine on, and again, I had to update it, and it hadn't been updated since December. So we both obviously got them, tried them out, and then just haven't used them for nearly 6 months. And that's the thing, man. Like, I tried it out again. I thought, okay, it's been nearly 6 months. Surely they will have refined the software experience on it. And I tried Raspberry Pi OS and Ubuntu 2404 now, which works fine. And they've solved the fan problem. It doesn't just spin full whack all the time, which is nice. But it was quite painful still. This idea that it can be a general purpose computer. I mean, I've got some shitty old ThinkPads that wipe the floor with it, man. My X270, which I haven't got at the moment, I'll be getting back soon, and my T480. I mean, it is night and day with the T480.
What were you using for storage?
I was using a SATA SSD in a USB enclosure.
Okay, wow.
I don't think that that's the bottleneck. I might be wrong, and maybe with an NVMe drive it might be better. But then the price just keeps going up and up once you bought the hat, once you bought the NVMe drive, compared to a shitty old ThinkPad that you can get off eBay for like £100, roughly the same price. It's night and day.
Yeah, but if you were going to do some home dev sort of stuff or some sort of project where you've got the GPIO port and all the different hats, you don't get that with ThinkPad.
No.
Okay, fair enough. If you want to use, I'm just doing a bit of web browsing, well, yeah, okay, fine, use a laptop for that. But if you want to do some decent projects, like, you can't beat them the fact that they are the sort of gold standard for all that. And you know that they're going to be building the Pi, whatever version, till several years later, like, if you need them in an actual hardware project. Like, I think they're still building the 2 at the moment. I think the 1 was only just finished recently because loads of hardware manufacturers were using it in different products.
Yeah, and even as an individual user, if you just have got a weather station with hats and whatever, yeah, it makes sense. But what I'm saying is they are pitching this as a general purpose computer, and it is still not that.
No, but that's why they got an IPO, so they can make them out of gold or whatever they have to do with them to make them one.
Right, yeah. I'm sure it'll be great. But to be honest, it's probably going to go back in the drawer for another 6 months until there's some development that makes me want to try it out again, just to talk about it here. And meanwhile, I use my shitty old ThinkPads to watch YouTube and do show notes. And I'd much rather use them because it's a much nicer experience. I did compare it to one of my older laptops, which is a VivoBook. It's got a 2nd gen i3, or maybe a 3rd gen i3 with 4 gigs of soldered RAM. And I would say it was a roughly similar experience. So it's getting there, but it's still way behind even 8th gen Intels. And it is just light years behind what Apple are doing. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with these Microsoft Surfaces and whatnot that they've announced today as we're recording that are ARM-based. I would imagine they'll be better than the Pi 5, but who knows? They'll be a lot more expensive, we know that much.
I love that vote of confidence. You would imagine. Come on, Microsoft, you could do it.
Well, it'll be running Windows, won't it? So
fair.
It won't be very good. I don't know, man. I'm just bitter because they built this huge company that's now going to do an IPO and make people very rich off the back of just nerds like us and people who've contributed to the software ecosystem and everything. And it feels like just sort of 2 fingers up. I mean, it felt like that during COVID when they just prioritized all of the industry customers and there was just no boards available for the rest of us who were sat on our asses doing fuck all because we couldn't go out.
I don't know. I don't think I agree. Most people have got a Raspberry Pi in their drawer unused already. They should have used that. Also, in the meantime, Raspberry Pi have created an enormous ecosystem. They've created loads of documentation. They've created loads of education programs around the world. They've done more for computer education in the last probably 10 years than any point in the last, I don't know, let's say 30-something years since the BBC launched their original computer literacy program. I think they've done an enormous amount of good and they have generated an enormous amount of value and they deserve to continue to exist. And if the way that they need to do that is be commercial and get some money in, then good luck to them.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Kolide. What do you call an endpoint security product that works perfectly but makes users miserable? A failure. The old approach to endpoint security is to lock down employee devices and roll out changes through forced restarts, but it just doesn't work. IT is miserable because they've got a mountain of support tickets, employees start using personal devices to get their work done, and executives opt out the first time it makes them late for a meeting. You can't have a successful security implementation unless you work with end users. That's where Kolide comes in. Their user-first device trust solution notifies users as soon as it detects an issue on their device and teaches them how to solve it without needing help from IT. That way, untrusted devices are blocked from authenticating, but users don't stay blocked. Kolide is designed for companies with Okta and it works on macOS, Windows, Linux, and mobile devices. So if you have Okta and you're looking for a device trust solution that respects your team, support the show and go to kolide.com/late-night-linux to watch a demo and see how it works. That's kolide.com/late-night-linux. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to late-night-linux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. Growing our movement and growing Mozilla to shape the AI era. Mozilla Foundation welcomes Nabiha Syed as Executive Director. So they've had a bit of a shake-up recently with the management structure. Mitchell Baker's still there. She is Executive Chair of the board. The AI stuff, not so keen on.
It's going to be great.
But Nabiha seems like a breath of fresh air, potentially. From what I can gather, she's a millennial, so she's, not some stuffy old person or whatever. She's a lawyer, which always helps. And she seems to have a good background. I think I'm feeling broadly positive about her appointment. Although, in Mark Sermon's piece about this whole thing, he writes, "As we talked about the executive director role, I also found a thought partner who sees the potential to combine the market and the movement sides of Mozilla's personality to shape blah, blah, blah." A thought partner. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to start using that phrase, I think.
Well, maybe with her journalism background and her work on the markup, maybe she will change the way that Mozilla communicates its ideas, because I hate it as well. It's so much bullshit writing in this. Why not just tell it as it is? I mean, a $30 million a year portfolio of movement building programs, which she'll take over. What is a movement building program? I've not seen Mozilla.
Is that not having a poo?
Move any building program since its two renegade programmers struck out on their own to create Firefox.
Well, in the piece that's just marked as being written by Mozilla, it says, she comes to Mozilla after leading the markup, an award-winning publication that challenges technology to serve the public good from its launch through to its successful acquisition in 2024. There's that old thing again, innit? Either you get acquired or you IPO.
Yeah.
I have to feel positive. She cannot do a worse job than they've been doing. Can she?
No, I agree. Let's be positive. You're right.
Why? Why do we have to be positive?
Because we don't know effectively, and we need to give them a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be worse. They could be hiring a witch doctor like Gnome.
Exactly.
Fair. That's a fair point. I'd forgotten about that.
At least Nabiha seems like a sharp, intelligent, competent person to do the job.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, Joe. Let's see.
Yeah, let's reserve judgment. If she fucks it up, then we'll say so, but it's far too early to tell. And I feel broadly positive, as I said. And the AI stuff as well. It's not all the same bullshit. You know, we've talked about this before. There's some that is good, like in-browser, on-device translation, for example. Great example of, Félim wouldn't call it AI, but nevertheless,
Correct.
a lot of people would.
Yeah.
But that is a very useful feature. Whether it's worth burning all the resources to make it happen or not is another question.
There is that, yes.
But also I do recognise that it has to be said in some way at the moment. It's just the thing to say. Maybe Mozilla shouldn't be the organisation to push the momentum forward on this, but I accept that it's just something you've got to drop into a press release.
Is it though? Isn't there a lot of value in being the we are not doing AI bullshit people?
I think in Mozilla's case, if it fights for offline features similar to AI that we can use and take advantage of, that are privacy first, that provide alternatives to all of the online ones, then I think it's okay.
Well, OSI, the Open Source Initiative, are working towards a proper open source AI definition, which is not an easy thing to do. And they're going on a world tour to talk to as many people as possible, which I suppose they somewhat have to do. But by the end of this tour, hopefully there will be a proper definition, and the likes of Facebook or Meta can stop open washing, as they call it, pretending that their AI is open source when it just isn't.
I'm not entirely sure the OSI is the right group to champion open washing or be against it.
Well, isn't their job to just define what it means to be open source?
They did such a good job with FOSS. I'm really happy that they've made open become essentially a useless word.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It's an absolutely useless word now. And that's their fault. I'm not so sure we should be letting them anywhere near anything anymore.
I don't see it as a useless word.
Oh, it is. Look, come on. The amount of companies that have now got like open licenses that are bullshit licenses, essentially, business first licenses or whatever they call them.
Business first, yeah.
Yeah, business first. You can't have it if you have a company. No, I just don't. I think they've done a general disservice to everybody over the while.
I couldn't disagree more, man, because those companies are not using open. They're using words like source available and business source and all the rest of it. They're not allowed by the rest of the community to use the word open because it doesn't comply with the OSI definition.
Yeah. If open source hadn't been the thing, like open source intelligence, open source business, open source, all this, it's just become a meaningless term now. And it's everything to do with them.
Well, open source was around long before FOSS, with open source intelligence, as you say, open source journalism. And if anything, we co-opted it.
Well, yeah, but where I'm really going with this is that the free software is the real definition that we want, not the open, because the open is so nebulous and doesn't mean anything.
Right. You're one of them. Got you.
No, it's just I'm fed up with the sort of, we get fed a load of open that isn't really open, or it doesn't meet the right definition. And that's why OpenAI is using OpenAI. It's down to all this.
Ah, there we are. I don't know why I hadn't put two and two together. That's what your beef is. Right.
But it is exactly it. It's a business term to make it sound better than what it really is.
I don't think you can blame the OSI for the rise of fucking OpenAI.
Well, they came along to try and make free software sound more business friendly. Let's be realistic. That's their entire shtick.
Yeah, which has ploughed billions or trillions of dollars into free software effectively.
I think it might have turned up there already anyway. I think we maybe give them a bit too much credit.
No way, man. Free software was not going to wash in English-speaking countries because it means the same as no money, and the suits and the VC people and all the rest of it were just not going to be interested. I knew you were like a bit that way inclined, but I didn't know if you were down as a proper open source hater.
I'm not a Stallmanite either.
Who?
I feel that a lot of the sort of cheesy business people that sort of swam up and made this what it is and sort of sold it all out to the point where we have the likes of Amazon essentially crushing you if you don't agree with them and things like that. I don't think we've necessarily had the perfect sort of rollout of free and open and things like that either. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this.
Right, Félim, you've snuck some KDE bollocks in. You've got, let's say, 43 seconds. HDR and game scope, go.
So HDR is in Plasma 6 and it's getting better in 6.1, and I have a HDR monitor. I turned it on and everything looked washed out and terrible. So it's all down to color profiles, and luckily in 6.1 color profiles will be able to be interpreted from the device itself, which doesn't always apparently work, but there is work towards it. But if you do want HDR and you have a Steam Deck, you can use GameScope, which is apparently a compositing manager that Valve's built for playing on the Steam Deck, and it is getting HDR enablement, and there's a flag you can enable, and then you can just add it as one of the launch options for your game to put GameScope in front of it and give it the resolution and have HDR games.
Fascinating. Well, link in the show notes. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when who knows what we'll be talking about. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Félim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.